What if I told you gilt-edged bond yields and consumer confidence comfort songs are just decoys? This summer's real drama lurks in 2 dusty footnotes of an Act of Parliament, and it's about to siphon off the UK's growth. Before we dig, hit pause for a coffee recharge. Let that aroma steep because the figures ahead aren't decaf. Rewind to August 1st, 2025, when the Online Safety Act's draconian clause finally kicked in. On July 25th, 2025, after 2 years of drafting and delay, the UK government flipped the switch on Section 12 of the Online Safety Act. Translation: any site, even forums, news outlets, or encyclopedias that could potentially expose users to harmful content must now verify every user's age and identity through government-issued ID, a live selfie check, or other highly effective age assurance tools. Wall Street index funds shrugged. Big tech grumbled, but the FCA and ICO cheered their new oversight powers. Why? Because this law touches every corner of the UK's £340 billion digital economy. If just 10% of web traffic dries up under age gates and ID hoops, annual GDP could shrink by £34 billion, enough to wipe out the entire city of London's fintech surge. Here's the part that should jolt any coffee-fueled Brit upright. Those 2 lines in a 250-page bill aim straight at your pay packet, your pension, and your pension pot. On paper, it's sold as child protection and disinformation defense. In reality, it sneaks in 3 enormous economic traps. Governments store data to protect citizens, but centralizing every Brit's ID and browsing history invites disaster. In a 2022 blunder, a UK defense official mistakenly emailed personal data for nearly 19,000 Afghan relocation applicants. Not intelligence on enemies, but private details of allies, to the wrong recipient. That single leak triggered a covert evacuation route, costing taxpayers an estimated £800 million. Broader Afghan resettlement efforts may exceed £2 billion. Now imagine that kind of breach scaled across every major web platform. A single hack of identity vaults could expose names, addresses, photographs, even browsing histories. UK cybercrime already costs billions annually, but credible estimates reaching £50 billion. Those extra compliance fees are like a regressive tax on digital services. SMEs pay proportionally more, choking startups and killing the very innovation the government claims to nurture. Imagine shoving a tanker into a wading pool. Compliance waves crash over the littlest players first, leaving only the giants afloat. Protecting society from harmful content sounds noble, until the definition of harm includes political speech, economic analysis, and plain facts. The Act reclassifies wikis, blogs, and legacy news sites as social media, forcing them to age-gate Brexit debates, GM crop critiques, and even parliamentary speeches. Contributors and journalists must verify IDs or vanish behind paywalls. An efficient market needs real-time data. When you can't read about a factory closure in Liverpool or the latest ONS productivity figures, personal and corporate decisions become stabs in the dark. Consumers won't know whether to move, hire, invest, or buy, so they wait. Delay is the death of growth. Quarterly fair value marks by self-appointed appraisers give the illusion of stability. But behind the scenes, risk accumulates. Savers see a flatline until the crash arrives in the next audit cycle. Decision-making is a muscle. Censor it and it atrophies. Investment hesitates, hiring stalls, and consumption shrinks. When CEOs and high-net-worth individuals smell government overreach, they simply take their billions elsewhere. UK GDP per head has flatlined for 20 years. In that time, North America and parts of Asia grew 50% plus. The UK limped at zero. The richest 1% pay 30% of all income tax, chase them away with red tape and surveillance, and tax revenues crater, forcing higher levies on the remaining 99%. A self-defeating spiral. Why base your EV gigafactory in a country that censors boardroom debates on energy policy? Why list your IPO where retail investors can't read market stabilization plans? Emerging giants choose Frankfurt, Amsterdam, or Toronto, anywhere but London. One of the things capital loves is freedom. When you cage speech and data, capital simply jumps the fence. Enjoying this contrarian deep dive? Hit subscribe and ring the bell so Marathon Macro guards your coffee and your investments, one stride ahead of the herd. Now back to the fallout. Starting with compliance, the new rules are expected to shave off about 0.3% of GDP, roughly £8 billion every year. A 1% drop in foreign direct investment would have a measurable impact, but no official forecast links this act to a specific £5 billion annual loss. On the consumer side, surveys suggest that 1 in 5 digital shoppers will avoid age-gated sites, trimming around £7 billion from retail e-commerce. All told, that's a near-term loss of around £20 billion each year, equivalent to slashing income tax by a full percentage point. And this is only the beginning. A sustained 0.5% drag on growth would cost the UK 15 to 20 billion pounds per year, accumulating into hundreds of billions over the decades to come. One behavioral quirk that often slips under the radar is the false calm bias. Sites may report only mild churn, but true panic is simmering just below the surface. When fair value appraisals lag reality by quarters, users see plus 1% returns while the FTSE drops 10%. They overcommit to safe digital havens, only to get caught in the systemic rewrite when auditors finally mark assets to market. In 1920, the US ratified the 18th Amendment, Prohibition, banning the production and sale of alcohol. Ostensibly a moral reform, it slammed the brakes on a $1 billion a year industry, equivalent to over $15 billion today, triggered widespread bootlegging, and cost federal and state coffers an estimated $11 billion in lost tax revenue through the 1920s. Unemployment in breweries, distilleries, and saloons surged. Organized crime muscled into the void, and the economy lugged an avoidable drag until repeal in 1933. Like today's digital ID, mandates, and age gates, Prohibition traded short-term protection for long-term pain, proof that clipping freedom often clips growth. 2009, National ID Card. U-turn, Blair's £13 billion ID scheme scrapped. Faith in centralized ID cratered. 2010, Census data scare. Forced online census registrations tanked response rates. ONS reinstated paper forms. 2022, LDI crisis. Pension funds leveraged gilt bets blew up. BOE had to bungee jump markets to prevent collapse. Each time, well-intentioned mandates spiraled into economic emergencies. Done sloppy. Regulatory booby traps rip growth. Data breaches explode. Capital bolts. Done right, transparency, resistance, digital rights vigilance could recoup 0.5% to 1% annual growth, enough to push GDP per capita back above the G7 pack. If you're after straight up, no fluff analysis, hit subscribe and ring the bell, because when the rules shift, the real gains go to those paying attention. History rhymes. Power rebrands. Stay inquisitive.